Is that you, Eli? I just updated the link. See if other people are going to show up. Yeah, I reposted the link. I don't know why I'm getting dropped frames today. There's something going on with, it's not my end today. Yesterday's issues were my end. Today I'm getting dropped frames for some reason. But it seems to be running right now. It says I can connect. I'm still getting dropped frames though. It's not the best connection. I might have to do some tweaks on the YouTube for next time. I'm dropping some frame rate. Let's see. I don't know. I'm gonna start. It is recording, so I guess if they miss it, they can always get back on. Start figuring it out as it goes. Unless this is gonna just be an issue, I can just make a normal video of this stuff if that's gonna happen. But I'm only seeing one viewer right now. The link in the classroom. So you should just have to click on the link in the classroom that's posted. I just made a message. Okay, people are starting to come in. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm losing frame rate if you can't tell. It looks bad. I'm not sure why I'm dropping frames. I think I might just make a video after this and post it anyways, but let's get through this one and see how well it works. If it kicks me off again, then I'm going to make a video. You can email if you have questions. But this topic really isn't too bad. So let's just the other option is we connect to this network instead. That's my slower network though. What is frame rate? Oh, so you know how movies are made up of just a bunch of pictures, like a flip book? How videos do that? It's like one picture after the next, 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 and so on. So the video camera is just taking a bunch of pictures. Each picture is called a frame, and the more frames you have, the more fluid the picture looks like it's happening. So like 60 frames per second is like the ideal. So whenever you're watching a video, you're seeing 60 images every second. Is kind of the ideal frame rate. Things can be higher than that, but your eye doesn't really pick up on it that much. And things can be probably as low as 30 frame rate before you start really noticing a difference. And I'm dropping those frames. So every time it goes to upload, I'm losing a couple of those frames. But yeah. So anyways, looking at finding a percent today, as long as it's going to keep me on. I will make another video doing similar problems and post that as well in case this does kick us. But anyways, today we're going to look at finding a percent as opposed to what we did yesterday, which was finding a part. I am going to do it in multiple different ways like I did yesterday, and you can pick whichever way you feel more comfortable doing it. And we're going to start by reasoning through this problem. So we're going to start by reasoning, just like we did yesterday. So we're going to start reasoning through things. And this says, it typically rains 6 out of 30 days of April in Mexico City. And it's going to ask what percent of the days in April does it rain. Reasoning is probably not your first approach, but we're going to do it this way. But anyways, this is saying, and I'm just going to make a little table. I'm going to put days on top and percent on the bottom here. And I'm just going to make a table here. And I know, I guess this is going to be days of rain, really. And I know just by reading this, if it rained 30 days during that month, then it rained 100% of the days. So I know 30 represents 100%. I also know that 0 is going to represent 0%. And I want to find out what 6 is. So where does 6 fall on this line here between these numbers? And what percent does it relate to? And again, you can just do it through reasoning. I mean, you know 10% pretty easily. You can find 10% of 30, which is going to be 3. And you can find 20% of 30 by doubling that, which would be 6. So it's going to be 20%. So you can sit there and just reason through it that way. Another way to do it, which is probably more intuitive to you right now, is the fact that it typically rains 6 out of 30 days. Right here, 6 out of 30, that's a ratio. So we can do this with ratios. Right? 6 out of 30, I want to know what percent that is, and you know that percents are always out of 100. So you can just set up your proportion and solve that way. And this is probably the easiest way to do this, in my eyes. I mean, you could reason through things, but I mean, this is pretty much the way. So your percent here would be your unknown. And you just cross multiply. So 30x is equal to 60 times 100, which is 600. And then you can just divide by 30 and divide by 30, and you get x equals that 20. So you get that 20%. Yeah, so this is how you find a part, or how you find the percent if you're given the parts in the whole. I mean, the other ways to do it is you could also just convert like you were doing before. You know that ratio is 60 out of 30. You can write that as a decimal, right? So just write this as a percent. So 60 divided by 30, I don't have my calculator in front of me. There we go. 6 divided by 30 is going to give you 0.2, and then you make that a percent, which would be 20%. So there are different ways to do this. You can look at the multiplication we did yesterday. You know, because it's of 30, you know some percent times 30 equals, was it 6? Right, so then that gives you really 30x equals 6. Divide each by 30, divide each by 30, you get that 6 divided by 30. So your x gets you 0.2, which again is equal to 20%. So there are different ways to do this. And you can choose whichever way you want. This is the way that I prefer to do things. This is a little harder to reason because what if this was like a 7 or something? Then you'd have to figure out what 1% was and then add it to that like you did before. Which I guess 1% really isn't too bad to do it that way. But those are the kind of problems you're going to face today. So I'm going to go over a few more examples before I'll start taking questions on your homework. But they are pretty straightforward and simple. I don't need that question anymore. And you're going to see questions, and they're going to be worded without context. 20, 25. So they're going to ask you things like, what percent is 20 of 25? And you can do it that way. So again, the easiest way for me to do these is to just set up your proportion. So work with your ratios. Right? So 20 is a part, 25 is a whole. If you notice, your whole is always going to go with the word of, and your part is always going to go with the word is when you reread it in this kind of context. The biggest issue with that is the fact that you never come across problems like this in real life. No one ever walks up to you and says, what percent of 20 is 25? It's more like, well, something costs $25, you're only paying 20% of it. Or, I'm sorry, you're paying $20, what percent did you save? So it doesn't really give you the context like this, but this will be your part. That's always going to be equal to your percent, which you don't know here, right? It asks literally what percent. And then your denominator here is going to be 100. And you just cross multiply. So you get 25x equals 20 times 100, 2000. Divide by 25, divide by 25, and you get, is that 80? Should be 80, right? Yeah. X equals 80, so 80% is your answer. Other ways to do it, again, you could reason through this. I will answer questions when we're done with our lesson. So get examples in your notes on how to do things. That way you can probably figure out the questions on your own. 20 of 25. So again, we know, just kind of making a chart here, we know 25 is 100%. You know 0 is 0%. You know, let's see, you want 20 out of that. You know 20 is around here, which I'd probably go with 10% next. You can probably figure out 10% of 25, just like we did yesterday, which is, again, move the decimal point once, which is 2.5. And then you want 20 or 20. How do I want to get to 20? 20% would be twice that, and so on. You just kind of play around with it and figure it out. 50% would be easy to get. 50% is half of this, and that is half of 25 is 12.5. And then you can just play around with it until you figure it out. So I can add a 50 and a 10 to get to 60%, and then I can add and see until I get to 20, because you know I need something over there. The problem with this is that you don't know exactly what to add to get to this number, because you don't know this number, you don't know this number, so you just kind of play around with it a bit. And in this case, trying to think of what other ones would be good to know. I mean, you could work it from there. You could be like, okay, 60% is going to be 12.5 plus 2.5, so 60% will give you 15. Right, and then you can add another 10% to get to 70, then you can add another 10% to get to 80, and eventually you'll hit a 20. Once you get to 20, you're going to want to know your answer. And it's going to be 80% is going to give you the 20. So you want that. So this here is a more systematic way. This is going to take some guessing and checking to it. The other way you can do it is just by converting. Hey, I have the fraction 20/25, so I want this as a percent. So divide it to get the decimal, which should give you 0.8, and then turn that into your percent. So whichever way you feel comfortable doing it is really what you're going to do. I highly suggest you try it this way, because that's how most of these are going to be answered in the end. So with that, I guess Logan's bugging me to do some problems. I don't even remember what it is. Looks like Logan's asking for 5 and Catherine's asking for 10. So let's look at 5 first. I gave you the workbook page, I think. Workbook page. That's horrible writing. $208. And number 5 is asking what percent of 5 is 16. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of ways to do this. Eli, are there any ways to figure out which is the part and which is the whole? Again, you're just going to have to read context for it. I can tell you if it's written like this, whichever number is paired with of is going to be your whole. Whatever number is paired with is going to be your part. So you can see how of goes with 5, or at least it goes with 5 more than it does 16. And then is goes with 16 because 5 was of. What percent of 5 is 16? So with this right away, you know your whole is 5 and you know your part is 16. So you got your fraction is actually 16 over 5, which is possible. You're allowed to have more than 100%. You just got to be careful with it. And then that's going to equal whatever your percent is over 100. In fact, if you're into this already, if you want to memorize something for this, memorize percent over 100 equals is over of. Memorize this. This is how you will set up every single one of these. So if you are missing a percent, it's going to be x over 100 equals is over of. If you're missing a part, it's going to be percent over 100 equals x over of. And if you're missing the whole, which we'll talk about tomorrow, it's going to be percent over 100 equals is over x. And you see how your variable just jumps around that proportion. And then you always solve them by cross multiplying. But if you want to memorize a template, it's technically not a formula, it's more of a template, but plug it into that and it's really easy. So here, of is 5, so 5 goes on the bottom. I guess I'll write it the other way so it matches it. Right? Percent over 100 equals is over of. You can see of is 5, so this will be 5. You can see is 16, so this will be 16. It literally asks what percent. Like you don't know what percent, so your percent is your variable. And then you can just solve. If it's worded differently, then you got to just pay attention to the context of it and say, okay, this one's a total, this one's a part. Because this is, I mean, if you want to, you could put in part over whole as well. And then just, hey, you're given one of them. And it's asking you to find something else. So, yeah. Once you have it set up, you just cross multiply like you've been doing for the past, I don't know how long it's been now. Solve for x by dividing by 5, 1, 6, 1, 6, 0 divided by 5. Gives you 320. So this is 320%. Right. And that's making sense too, because you know your whole is 5, so 5 is 100% here equals 5. 200% would then equal 10. 300% would then equal 15. And you know if 100% is 5, then let's see, you really want to add 20 to it. So if 100% is 5, 20% is what you're kind of looking for to get to 320. You want to know what 1 is worth. So it's making sense that it'll be this. This way here is probably the best way to do it. The other way you could do these is just by making the fraction and solving the percent. So 16, which is really the same thing. 16 divided by 5 gives you, what is it, 3.2. And then you want to just make that into a percent by moving your decimal point 2 places. So 320%. So lots of different ways to do it. Again, I recommend this way. This will help you with algebra in the future. So that's the way I would recommend. Get you more comfortable with that. Catherine wanted number 5 next. Are you sure you don't want me to do number 1, Anna? I'm sorry, what was that? Catherine wanted what? Oh, Catherine wanted 5. Logan wanted 10. We just did 5. Logan wanted 10. So let's look at 10. Explain how to rewrite the formula percent times whole equals part to find the percent that you know apart. Oh, okay. So if you remember yesterday I mentioned one way to solve that is through multiplying. Right? You can just multiply to find something, and you took your decimal. So you took your percent, which was a decimal, right? And then you multiplied it by your whole, whatever your whole was, and that gave you your part. So if you remember that, it'll work out great. So explain how you can rewrite this formula, how you can do these problems like this. Well, it's going to be the same thing as the algebra that I just showed you with the cross-multiplying thing. But anyways, we're just going to treat these like variables and move them around. You can't really do much, but just kind of work your way through it, and I'll show you how it relates to the other questions because we were doing them this one anyways. But you're going to solve for the percent. So you want to get percent by itself, and I'll write percent in blue here. So you know, hey, blue percent is like your variable. You want to get that by itself. So I'm going to look at it. I'm multiplying it by the whole, so I'm going to divide this by the whole, whatever that whole number is, and I'm going to divide this by the whole. And you should note right here, this here is your definition of a fraction. Right, part over whole. And that's going to cancel out the wholes over here, so your percent is equal to your part divided by your whole, which goes back to other problems like number 1, which some of you asked me to do anyways, which says what percent of 60 is 90? And it goes back to that saying, oh, to solve this, I can just write this as a fraction. Remember, this is your whole, this is your part. So that's, so did I copy that right? Is that really giving you, yeah, it's giving you one like that right off the bat. Divided by 60. And you can see, hey, it's the same stuff over here. Part over whole is going to equal your percent. Just remember, you change that to a decimal over here, so you're going to get the decimal answer doing this. So then 90 divided by 60 gives you 1.5. And then you want to write that as a percent, which will be 150%. Again, move your decimal point twice to do that. So hopefully that explains number 10 for you. But again, it's just writing it as a fraction and then turning the fraction into a percent. It's what you were doing last week. It's pretty easy to do. Uh, 25% of 25. So this is number 2. Again, if you're going to follow this, if you memorize this, all the problems from yesterday, all the problems today, and all the problems from tomorrow can use this. So that way, all 3 of these lessons turn into the same thing, and it's just using this. So to use this, hey, what number goes with of? 25 goes with of. What number goes with is? That goes with is, and it literally asks you what the percent is. So I don't know the percent. 100 is a constant. It's always going to be there because the definition of percent. And then of is 25. Is 175. And again, you should be able to realize, hey, this is an improper fraction. This is going to be larger than 100 as well. So cross multiply. And divide. 700. So there's your answer for 2. Again, you could have also just done 175 divided by 25 equals 7, and then make this into a percent. You still get the same answer. So either way that you want to work it, you have options. These are the word problems. And then it gives you a chart over here. You have your grade and you have your number of students. In 6th grade you have 420, in 7th grade you have 390, and in 8th grade you have 390 as well. So this is, you're just looking at, I'm not going to do all of this for you. I will reword it, but you got to try some of these on your own. To see if you actually understand what's going on. But it's asking for a percent. So again, if you're going to use this template that I wanted to give you yesterday, but I'm giving you today, if you're going to use this, what percent, you don't know your percent, of the students are currently in 6th grade. So 6th grade is a part, and students will be your whole. So what is your part? Your part is 420. and your whole students, well, that would be everybody in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade added up. So let's get a total here. Just add those up. 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 6, 10, 11, 12. And then you just solve for x. I'm not going to solve for x for you, Logan. You can do that. But that's what it's looking at. And then 8 is just asking it's asking 6th and 7th grade. So then to get your percent, you still don't know. It's still out of 100. I guess I'll write that as a variable. Your numerator here is going to be 6th grade plus 7th grade. So this will be 420 plus 390, whatever that is, over 112. Oh. So you can just solve for this. Again, just do parentheses first. It should be alright. Give them a shot on your own. If you're not sure of your answer, bring it up tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Anna wants to do 4. Again, if you're going to use this, go for it. Right, I don't know percent. Percents are always over 100. This goes with is, this goes with of. Of is 6, 21 is that. Cross multiply. Any other questions on things? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you use this, again, this will work for all of them. You'll get questions like yesterday is like, I don't know, 21% of 50 is what? Right here, this would be a part. So you would have 21 over 100 equals x over 50. And then you can just cross multiply to solve. Or you'll get problems like tomorrow where it asks like 35% is 81 of what number? And again, of goes with what number, is goes with 81, and that's a percent. So it'd be 35 over 100 equals 81 over x. And you can see how it just goes around. I just did number 9, Anna. Didn't give you the answer. 3. This one you should be able to do just by reasoning through. You know 1% equals 1, so 2% is going to equal, or sorry, 1%, 10% is going to be 1, so you know 20% is going to be 2. That one you can probably just use your reasoning for it. With that, you can also set it up using percent over 100 equals is over of, and you don't know your percent. 100 is goes with 2, of goes with 10, and cross multiply. So 200 equals 10x, divide by 10, divide by 10, and you're left with 20 equals x. So either way you get it. I didn't give you the answer to it, I just told you how to solve it. Did we do number 9? Oh, I guess we didn't do number 9. Sorry, Anna. I'll walk you through number 9. Number 9 is a stupid question, too. Penelope bought stock in a company for $8 per share. So when she bought it, it was $8 per share. Now the price of the stock is $18 per share. So now it is $18 per share. And it wants to know what percent of the original price is it now. So just looking at it, the original price here is $8, and the price now is $18. So this is asking, if you can pull out the context, what percent is 8 of 18? No, I'm sorry. What percent of 8 is 18? You can see how is goes with the 18 and of goes with the 8. So this is what it's asking. So again, you don't know your percent. And that makes sense because you're going to be doubling. It goes up more than double it, so it should be more than 100%. Right? 16 would be 100% increase. This is going to be more than 100% increase. And then you can just cross multiply. And I'm done showing you how to cross multiply. If you still don't know how to cross multiply, email me and I'll make you videos. But solving proportions was last chapter. I think I've done every single one of them now after I do 6. Again, it's asking 3 is what percent of 50. So if you want to use the template, set up just like this. Just identify which numbers go with which. Percent you don't know because it says what percent. So that's going to be your unknown. 100 is a constant. It's always there. Is, 3 goes with is. It says 3 is. And of, 50 goes with of. It says 50. Then you can cross multiply. Again, 300 equals 50x divided by 50 divided by 50. And you get 6. So 6%. Again, you could have also just set it up as a fraction and just divided the fraction. That's the 3/50th divided out and gives you 0.06, which equals 6%. So you can do it that way too. Not too difficult, but there's that. Okay, last chance for questions. If that class is over, it's after 2. You can always email me if you need something. Hopefully you're not too overwhelmed with everything. I'm trying to move fairly slowly, but it's tough for me to judge because I don't actually see your reactions to things. But with that, email if you have any questions. I've been trying to get back to you. Quizzes for science are posted. Try to get science done by the end of the month. If you're having trouble meeting that deadline, shoot me an email. I will probably give you more time just because of the strange circumstances we are under. Your project list will be out later this week. I still am struggling on finding 1 or 2 projects. I don't know if I want to put 4 or 5 on for you to choose from because I'm struggling to find a couple that is easy for you to do and not too, you know, just kind of staring at the computer all day like you've probably been for the past 3 weeks. But I'll let you know when that comes out. Keep an eye on it.